Hello all, welcome to yet another live session of Narayana IAS Academy. So as all of you know, this is Sureka Bhaskar presenting to you the daily news analysis. And for today's discussion, we've actually picked up a number of topics from both the Hindu as well as the Indian Express, which becomes extremely important and relevant for the UPSC CSE examination. So before we actually start with, let us actually see the initiatives or this, the products that Narayana IAS Academy has actually come up in order to ease your UPSC CSE preparation. And as a routine, that let us actually look into the daily motivation. The motivation for the day is, if you want to shine like a sun, first you need to burn like a sun. This is very simple, right? All of us actually understand that we need to give it all and first of all go through all the uncertainties in life, just like the sun, how it exerts itself in order to give out light or radiation. So that is how we actually have to go through, or we actually have to possess what you call it as perseverance. We need to sacrifice a lot to in order to actually achieve our dreams. So now let us actually move forward and look at what are the courses that the R&D team on Narayana IAS Academy has actually come across. So we have come across with 1 year prelims cum mains integrated course for the 2026 examination, and similarly we have a 2 year curriculum for the 2027 examination as well, and the total number of instruction hours will be 1000 plus hours. And if you look at our program overview, it is going to equip you with good content as well as good lectures from experienced teachers from all the streams, in order to actually for you to appear with ease for your prelims as well as the prelims examination, followed by the mains examination as well as the interview. Moving forward, if we see, we actually have a 800 plus hours of general studies and CSAT classes, as well as we will be providing you with current affairs curated classes, as well as we will give you the micro schedule as well, where it is a daily schedule that will actually help you to stick to a particular schedule without being lost in the vast expanse of the UPSC syllabus. And also we will be providing the lectures by the expert faculty who are experienced educators and who will be able to predict the potential questions that can come in both your prelims as well as mains examination. Also we have a process or a phenomenal process of training as well as providing you the feedback. Okay. And now moving forward, we provide you a number of study materials. First actually starts with the Narayana IAS study kit, where we have 12 Navigator NCRT books and 21 GS Navigator books. And we have also, we are actually providing you with the PYQs of the prelims as well as the mains examination, which is categorized thematically or topically. And next, moving forward, we actually have our digital resources, where we provide you with 250 plus model answers, which have been curated by the people who have appeared for the UPSC interview. Okay. Now moving forward, we actually have a monthly current affair magazine, which is your one-stop solution in order to stay updated with what is actually happening nationally as well as internationally. That is your current affairs. So far we've actually come up with a yearly edition, or you can say we have actually come up with 12 editions of current affairs magazine, and shortly we'll be coming up with the yearly compilation. Okay. So that will help you to quickly revise for your prelims examination. Okay. Now moving forward, let us actually have a look at the number of topics that we've actually picked up for discussion today. So the very first topic for our discussion has been picked up from page number 5 of the Indian Express, that is India UAE. Just give me a minute. Yeah. So the first one is India's UAE common goal to preserve, promote stability, security of our region, says Jai Shankar, who is our External Affairs Minister. So in this particular article, as you know, what is important for the examination is our understanding about what is the shared relationship or the shared areas of interest India actually has with that of UAE, and what have been the agreements which have actually been signed so far, and what are the key agreements that were signed by the recent visit of our Prime Minister to UAE, and what are the challenges in India-UAE relationship, what is the status of India's Indian diaspora in UAE, what is their contribution to our remittances, etc., and what is the way forward in order to have an enhanced relationship with this particular region is what we'll be discussing for the mains perspective in the first article. Now, moving forward, the second article is nothing but we'll be discussing about Swiss shock EFTA member lobs back India's MFN tax volley. So this might actually look little confusing or very difficult for you. So what is important for us to understand certain terms like double taxation avoidance agreement. It's important for us to understand what is this EFTA, that is what do you mean by free trade agreement, and what do you mean by most favored nation clause, and how it is actually relevant with respect to that of the recent tussle that we are actually having with Switzerland. So all this becomes important for the prelims examination, and this particular article you can actually find from page number 13 of the Hindu. Moving on, the third article has been picked up from page number 21 of the Indian Express. How a distant galaxy provides a peek into nascent Milky Way. So here we'll be understanding the science, or you can say the physics concept. Okay, so here we'll actually understand the concept of how visibility actually works, how gravity actually works, and how the phenomena of light actually works. Okay, so how does this have relevance with the recent observations by the James Webb telescope? Okay, so all these things become very, very important for the prelims examination. And moving forward, the last article will be center consistently hiked the capex. So here what we'll be discussing is about the capital expenditure by the government and what has been the recent statement by the finance minister. So here we'll be understanding what is this government expenditure and whether it is capital expenditure or revenue expenditure which is actually going to increase the asset creation in the economy, or whether it is going to decrease our liability. All that we'll actually be looking into this particular article. So with no further delay, let us actually move into discussing the first article for the day, that is India-UAE common goal to preserve, promote the stability, security of the region, says Jaishankar. So our Indian External Affairs Minister, Mr. Jaishankar, actually said that India and UAE actually have shared interest, okay, like in establishing, regional security, in maintaining the stability of the region, etc., which can actually be achieved by certain cooperation, like a defense cooperation or security cooperation, or fighting the terrorism in the region, etc. So now this particular article becomes important, where we'll be discussing about India UAE relations, and this becomes, you can map it to GS paper 2 mains examination under international relations, that is IR, effect of policies and politics of developed and developing countries on India's interest and Indian diaspora. So this is what we'll be discussing in this particular article. Okay, so now let us actually move forward. So there has been a previous year question that has been asked in the year 2022 about the I2U2. What is an I2U2 initiative? It is a collaboration between these four countries, that is India, Israel, UAE, as well as United States. So here how it actually becomes important is how it has actually transitioned India's position in global politics. So any kind of a regional grouping, what impact it actually has on the Indian economy, that becomes extremely important for the mains examination. So in that light, you can see this I2U2 initiative appear in your 2022 mains. Now let us see why this particular topic has been in news. Okay, so recently our external affairs minister, Mr. Jaishankar, had actually said India and UAE actually share common interest in what all areas, that is in maintaining the regional stability, in order to take care that our relationship is actually prospering, that is prosperity as well as security of the region, which can be achieved through enhanced defense as well as security cooperation. So this is what it is. So as a larger picture, we need to understand what has been historic ties between India and UAE, and recently what are the areas of focus that India and UAE are focusing on, what are the groupings that we are actually part of, whether we are part of this Gulf Corporation Council, whether India is a part of I2U2, because of which how Indian geopolitics or India's position in geopolitics has actually changed. All this becomes important. Now let's quickly move into understanding what have been the key pacts that were actually signed between India and UAE when the Prime Minister had actually visited UAE in the recent past, that is early 2024, to be very particular, Feb 2024. Okay, so there were certain key pacts that were signed between India and UAE. Let us actually see that one by one. The first one is the bilateral investment treaty. So this actually, from the name itself, this is going to enhance the investments, okay, from one country to another. So investment promotion in both the countries. The second one is regional connectivity. So here they have actually signed an intergovernmental agreement on IMEC. IMEC is nothing but it actually stands for India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor. Okay, for example, you have India and there is a corridor from India connecting the Middle East, and that further connects Europe. Okay, so this is your IMEC corridor. So they have actually signed an intergovernmental framework agreement on IMEC, that is India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor. The next one is domestic debit or credit cards. Okay, so here they have actually aimed at interlinking the RuPay India with J1 UAE. What do you mean by RuPay? You guys would have heard about RuPay payment, right? So it is nothing but a card payment network. So it's a card payment network that has been indigenously developed by India, and who developed it? It was National Payment Corporation of India, and this was in 2012. So this was actually established in order to increase the financial literacy of India and also for financial inclusion. Okay, so this is RuPay. So how do you have these Visa as well as MasterCards? Okay, so these are international card payment methods, networks, right? So similarly, we actually had the development of RuPay, and they want to link this particular RuPay with that of J1, that is JAYWAN, which is actually a card, payment network which is located in UAE, which is in UAE. Okay, so that is what they aimed at. The next one is digital infrastructure projects cooperation, where they wanted to cooperate and enhance their investments also in the digital infrastructure. Now moving forward, next one is energy cooperation. That is, both the sides had actually signed a memorandum of understanding on electrical interconnection and also trade and promoting energy as well as security. Okay, moving forward, instant payment platforms interlinking. Similarly, how they want to, now they actually want to link UPI. Okay, that is the payment platform that we actually use, right, like Paytm, Google Pay, etc. They want to link this UPI with AANI, that is ANI. Okay, this is also a payment interface like that for seamless cross-border transaction. And finally is your National Archives Cooperation Protocol. Okay, archives are nothing but these are set of documents. So what do you mean by archives? These are set of documents. It can either have something related to the documents related to your history, or it can be maps, okay, or it can be the collection of MOUs that you have signed. So they wanted to preserve this. So bilateral cooperation in restoration and preservation of the archival materials. And finally, you have heritage and museums cooperation. Okay, so here there has been an MOU that was signed on this maritime heritage complex at Lothal, that is Gujarat. This is nothing but it is actually going to talk about India's past maritime trade. It's going to talk about India's exploration so far, and finally India's naval prowess, how well India has actually done in terms of navy. So this is what it is. So these are few of the key pacts that have been signed between India and UAE following the Prime Minister's visit in early 2024. Now, having understood this, let us quickly move into what is actually the significance of UAE for India, and then we will see how India is actually significant for UAE. So, first one is energy security. In terms of energy security, see, India is actually the third largest oil importer globally, and specifically it is actually dependent or import dependent on UAE for the oil supplies. In order to protect India's energy security, what happens? They actually have to have this trade, that is imports from UAE. So this is what it is. First is energy security. India is the third largest oil consumer globally, so this is globally. Okay, so we have a significant share of oil being imported from UAE, and so UAE happens to be a major supplier. And in order to actually ensure or to secure India's energy security, UAE becomes very favorable for India. The next one is economic diversification. Okay, so UAE is actually looking for economic diversification because majorly it is an oil exporting country, right? So here it is looking for the diversification of the economy in terms of, number one, it can be, world class education. It can be establishing a sustainable environment. So sustainable environment. The next one can be innovation. And finally, it can be, these are the other ways, and it can actually focus on other sectors apart from this oil sector. Like I told you, education is already there. It can focus on tourism, then it can focus on real estate, etc. So that is what is this point. So economic diversification, since it is actually, trying to diversify its economy, there are significant opportunities for Indian businesses to actually invest there and to reap the benefits. Next one is strategic partnership. So let me clear this. Strategic partnership can be established through that IMEC corridor I told you, right? By connecting India to the Middle East and then to the Europe. So India's influence in the So this is what it is, India's influence in the Middle East within the GCC also. So what do you mean by GCC? Whether India is part of GCC or not? GCC is nothing but it is an economic and political grouping. Okay. So it actually has the members from, it has all the Gulf members except Iraq. And you should also know India is not a member. Okay, so this is what it is. So here it actually enhances India's influence in this, India's influence or India's investment or ties with the members of the GCC. That is what it is. Next one is maritime security. So post US withdrawal from the Middle East, okay, particularly after the withdrawal, it is actually seen, or India is seen as an, net security provider. So how India is actually acting as a net security provider? By countering the maritime piracy, the state-sponsored terrorism, etc., particularly in the Gulf or in the Red Sea region. So this is how, UAE is actually significant for India. Now let us actually move forward and understand how is India significant for UAE. First one we saw, right? So India can actually be a market for the diversification, because India is actually a growing economy. It is a growing economic market where we actually have various or diversified economic ventures. Okay, beyond oil, we are actually doing fairly well in terms of, we can say, education, in terms of real estate, in terms of we can help them with respect to that of tourism, etc. Okay, so all these things and investment in all these sectors can actually be done. Next one is strategic partner in security. We know India is actually seen as a security provider, right? And it's going to secure the sea lanes of communication, that is the maritime route in the UAE region. Next one, economic transformation partner, because UAE is actually trying to transcend or transform from the economy which is predominantly dependent on the oil sector, right? And here India can be a market because India can actually provide UAE with respect to that of technology, and India is actually doing fairly well with respect to that of renewable energy, then sustainable development, etc. Next one is culture, that is people to people ties and Indian diaspora. This becomes very important. So Indian diaspora actually account for about, there are 3.5 million Indians, okay, in the UAE, who actually account for around 30%, okay, of the population of UAE. So this is what it is. So there is a large diaspora over there. Now let us quickly go through the key areas of cooperation between India and UAE. So actually, a formal diplomatic tie. This was actually established in the year 1972 only, okay. And after that, it was actually characterized by the PM visit in 2015, and the Crown Prince actually came down to India in 2017. And there, from a formal diplomatic tie, we actually went ahead of one step in establishing a strategic partnership with UAE. And after that, in 2019, Mr. Modi, that is the Prime Minister, current Prime Minister, he was awarded this Order of Zayed Award. This is nothing but one of the highest civilian honors, okay, that they had actually bestowed upon him. The next one is engagement in global forums are there. That is, you can actually see UAE's participation in the G20 grouping, which was actually presided over the, India was actually the chair. India was hosting it, okay. So this is one thing. Next one is economic and trade relations. So there was a signing of the comprehensive economic partnership agreement. Okay, so this was actually signed in the year 2022. So after this, what happened? That is, the bilateral trade between India and UAE had actually increased. That is, it actually reached $85 billion post this comprehensive economic partnership agreement. And also the FDI, that is foreign direct investment, increased threefolds, and then UAE became the fourth largest investor in the Indian market. Next one is energy cooperation. We have different companies, that is companies from both the sides, that is Saudi as well as India. What happens? They invest, okay. That is, you see, ADNOC and ISPRL, there have been memorandum of understanding between these two companies, that is Strategic Crude Oil Reserve in Mangalore, that is located in Karnataka. And also there have been exploration of crude oil storage, again at Karnataka by this particular company, and 10% of the stake, that is ONGC led consortium in Abu Dhabi's oil reserve, okay. So this is the oil reserve. So this is the kind of energy cooperation both the sides actually share. Now moving forward, if you see fintech and digital cooperation, we saw, right, they are actually trying to interlink this RuPay as well as their system over there. So if you see implementation of RuPay, which is actually a card payment network, and Rupee Dirham settlement system. Dirham is nothing but the currency of UAE, right? So there is a settlement system, and they also established the local currency settlement system in order to enhance direct trade between the India and UAE in terms of INR as well as this dirham, okay. Moving forward, regional and international cooperation. So India also is seen to be an active member of participation in I2U2, which is nothing but a consortium of India, Israel, UAE and US for diversified interest. Also, there is engagement in this particular economic corridor, and there are more projects like the GGCI in COP28. GGCI was nothing but it is the Global Green Climate Initiative. So this was it. This was actually achieved in COP28. Moving forward, there are joint defense exercises also like Zayed Talwar, if you see, it is a naval exercise, and Desert Eagle, which is an exercise by the Air Force. And if you see the people to people ties, I told you around 30% of UAE's population is by the Indian, diaspora. So here the annual remittances are around 17.56 billion. This is as of 2018. Please do update this figure. And also there are cultural exchanges in terms of Indian cinema, yoga, etc. So these are the different areas of cooperation between India and UAE. Now, what are the challenges in India-UAE relationship? First one is India's commitment to reducing the crude oil imports. So actually, India has actually committed to reduce the crude oil imports by 50% in 2030. That is why we have a lot of initiatives like the FAME initiative in order to control the emissions. And then we also have the HELP, that is nothing but hydrocarbon exploration licensing policy. We have the ethanol blending program, etc. So if we actually reduce it, then what happens? A crude oil import dependence on UAE will actually reduce, and that is actually a concern for UAE. Next one is alternate viable oil imports. We are actually looking for cheaper alternatives, okay? That is, we are trying to import discounted oil from that of Russia. So again, this has actually, importing this discounted oil has reduced the import bill of India by 29%. So there is advantages for us, right? So this is also going to be a challenging situation for UAE. And then there are non-tariff barriers by the UAE. UAE has actually recently come up with these phytosanitary standards, okay? That is, they actually have very, very strict norms. So for our agricultural product to reach the UAE market, it is actually becoming very, very difficult. So it is a challenge to India's food sector as well. So these are few of the challenges between India and UAE. Next one is China's investment policy. This is nothing but it is called as the checkbook policy. That is, there is an increase in the investment of the Chinese government in this particular region, which is probably, or it actually causes a potential crowding out of the Indian businesses from UAE. So this is one thing. Next one, they have this kafala system. What do you mean by kafala system? It's a huge labor exploitative not a program, it is a system where you have the employer, he will actually decide and overlook or strictly monitor the kind of the work you actually take up. He will look and take care of your, immigration statuses. So all these are actually, affecting the welfare of the Indian workers in UAE. And also we have a number of regional conflicts that are going off late, the volatility in the Middle East region, right? Be it, the Israel-Palestine conflict, Israel-Palestine, and then uncertainties or volatility in Yemen. All these are also the reasons for, one of the challenges for Indian companies to invest over there. Next one, this actually affects India's interest and investment, and also it actually presents a very, very complex geopolitical situation or a challenge for India. Okay, so these are all the challenges. Now, what can be the way forward? First one, you need to reduce the non-tariff barriers. Okay, you need to give us few concessions, and then you need to reduce these barriers in order to facilitate smooth bilateral investments. Next one, you have to initiate a 2+2 dialogue, like how India and US have 2+2 dialogue. So similarly, India UAE actually have to felicitate, or they actually have to have a 2+2 dialogue where the diplomatic as well as the defense dialogue, defense partner, heads from both the countries can actually come forward in order to align with the strategic security and defense cooperation. Next is, we need to harness the soft power through cultural and social exchanges, we know, right? By promoting tourism, then yoga, and then cinema, entertainment, and all those things. Finally, we need to align with Vision 21 of UAE. This is nothing but, this actually includes 4 tenets, that is Vision 21 of UAE. First one is diversifying your economy. Second one, establishing a sustainable environment. Third one is world-class education. And finally, the fourth one is innovation. So we need to align with that. That is, we need to collaborate on the projects which actually concerns these 4 dimensions or sectors. Okay. Next one, we need to address this exploitative labor practice of this kafala system, how it can be done, because labor law reforms actually have to be brought so that the situation and conditions are conducive for the Indian workers over there. Okay. So this is one. The next one, strengthen the GCC relations. Okay. So you need to broaden India's influence and opportunities in this particular region. Okay. So these are some of the way forwards. So with this, we've actually come to the end of the discussion between India and UAE. So any country any prime ministerial visit, we actually need to know about what kind of relations we have had with them, and from like how the relationship have actually been upgraded from a regular partnership to a strategic partnership. So all these we need to definitely know for our UPSC exam. So over here we've actually discussed about what is the India-UAE relations. So how we had broken that up is we actually understood what is this significance of each other, significance of UAE for India, and then we saw what is the significance of India for UAE, and then we actually learnt about what have been the key areas of agreements since the history, and then we moved forward and saw what are the challenges. And when we discuss about challenges, we actually have to complete our discussion only after discussing what are the different way forward in order to enhance the relation or ties between both the countries. Okay, so this is how your questions can also be asked in your mains examination, and also you need to know the regional groupings where both of them are actually an active participant of, okay, like the I2, U2, and whether India is part of GCC or not. All these things you need to know. Now moving forward, let us move to the next article, that is a Swiss shock, and here we'll be discussing about a lot of things, that is the European Free Trade Association, and then we'll be discussing about the most favored nation. Next we'll be discussing about double taxation avoidance agreement, and also general agreement on trade and tariffs, GEATT, and all these prelim important basic concepts will be discussed in this article. And also this becomes very important as it forms the current events of national and international important portion or the topic of prelims, and next it can be mapped to Indian economy GS paper 3. Now let us quickly move forward. There has been a previous year question with respect to double taxation avoidance agreement. Okay, so you need to know these basic things that can actually be asked in your examination. So moving forward, let us actually see why this particular topic has been in news. Recently, Switzerland has actually decided to suspend the most favored nation status that it had actually been given to India under the double taxation and avoidance agreement. So let me break this up into two. First, let me tell you what is the most favored nation status treatment. Okay. For example, if there is a country A and if there is a country B, they actually have an agreement. That is, they are already friends, okay, with each other. So they have come to an agreement. Say, let's say country A is India and country B is Germany. Say, India has actually told Germany, see, when I'm going to import cars from you, I'm going to reduce your import duty from 10% to 5%. Okay, so I'm going to charge you only 5%. So, for example, India has reduced the import duty from 10% to 5%. Okay, and this is this is something what India has actually given to Germany. Now, for example, in this case, MFN, India actually has a most favored nation with what? A country C. That is nothing but here is Switzerland. Okay. So, let me explain. There are two countries. For example, country A is India and country B is actually Germany. And if India is actually giving a tax or an import duty concession for Germany, and the same kind of treatment it actually has to give it to Switzerland also, with which it actually has this most favored nation status. That is nothing but when two countries, that is in this case when India and Switzerland are actually in a kind of agreement, what happens? Switzerland also deserves any kind of concession India gives to any other third country. Okay, so here the third country is Germany. Do you understand? So let me repeat this from beginning. For example, there are two countries, or I can put it this way also. For example, India has an MFN clause or a kind of trade agreement with another country. So here India is actually having a trade agreement with Switzerland. So India is having a trade agreement with Switzerland. So they are in an agreement, and here how the most favored nation clause actually happens is that any kind of concession that India gives to the third country, say Germany, where India has actually accepted that it's going to reduce the import duty from 10% to 5%, the same automatically applies to Switzerland also. So this is how the MFN actually works. And under what is this double taxation avoidance agreement is that any business or an individual whose income is actually taxed in both the countries, that is in India also and in Switzerland also, that cannot be done, right? So that is what is called as double taxation avoidance agreement. This has also been signed between both the parties. Now let's move forward and understand. What do you mean by most favored nation treatment? So it is a fundamental principle that actually operates in international trade as well as investment law. Okay. So this means one country will provide the same trade advantage or any kind of privilege or any kind of immunity to the trading partners who are members of the WTO. What are the key characteristics of this is that it is a non-discriminatory principle, because what you give one person, you need to give to this person also. And it ensures that the country grants a special favor. Like for example, I told you the customs duty. So like a lower custom duty rate to one nation, it must grant the same favor to all the other WTO members also. And this actually was established in 1947 under the General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs. Okay, that is the GATT. Now moving forward, that is what I gave you an example, right? For example, I actually had reduced the custom duty or reduce the import duty on Germany from 10% to 5%. And this actually applies to the other countries as well. Other country as in with which whom I actually have this MFN. Okay, so this is what it is, and this is actually there to avoid any kind of preferential treatment between the countries. And if there are preferential treatment between countries, what happens in the long run? It's actually going to distort the economy. So that is what this article is actually talking about. Now let us see what is India Switzerland MFN treatment under DTAA. Okay, so India and Switzerland had actually signed this MFN back in 1995, and it was amended twice, once in 2001 and next in 2011. So the provisions actually under this, it actually aims to prevent the double taxation of income for the individuals. For example, I am an individual who is actually an Indian starting a business in Switzerland. So if I am going to be taxed there and I am going to be taxed here, it's not fair, right? So that is what it is. It prevents double taxation of income for the individuals and the businesses operating between India and Switzerland. And also the MFN clause in this context actually means that if either of the country, that is take India or Switzerland, provides more favorable tax treatment to a third country than a similar agreement, in a similar agreement, those benefits will automatically extend to India-Swiss double taxation avoidance agreement. Same thing. If India is providing something to a third country, because I have an agreement with Germany, I have to provide the same with Swiss also, because I've already assigned this with Switzerland. So this is what this actually means. Now moving forward, example provided here is under the MFN clause, Switzerland actually applied a reduced withholding tax rate of 5% on dividends, similar to what India, that is India here had actually agreed, okay, with such an agreement with Slovenia and Lithuania. So here what happened, under the MFN clause, Switzerland also applied a reduced withholding tax. Okay, so this is what it is actually saying. What do you mean by withholding tax? Withholding tax is nothing but it is a tax that the government levies on a business or the person. Okay, like for example, or a person. For example, if you actually have a salary, what happens? A particular amount of the salary is deducted at the source itself, right? That is TDS, tax deducted at source. It is actually deducted by the employer and it is deposited in your name on behalf of you by the employer to the government. So that is how this entire framework actually works. Now moving forward, why has Switzerland suspended MFN treatment for India? So here what do you say? India has actually promised, right, the withholding tax of only 5%. So that is what it has promised with Slovenia as well as other countries like Lithuania. But the same actually did not indirectly, or you can say, by default, it did not apply to Switzerland because of the Supreme Court's intervention and the ruling in 2023, where it actually said MFN clause does not apply automatically, or you can say by default it does not apply, but it actually requires an explicit notification from the Indian government under the Income Tax Act. So that is why, so MFN, the Supreme Court actually said it does not apply automatically and it requires an explicit notification by the Indian government under the Income Tax Act, and this contradicted Switzerland's earliest interpretation. What Switzerland actually earlier interpreted: India get into any kind of such a treatment with any other country, it has to give me also that treatment, but now it is actually not applying. So Switzerland feels there is lack of reciprocity, and Switzerland applied MFN benefits, but India did not issue the notification. So this is what it is. So this has actually happened in case of Nestle. Okay, so here the Swiss companies like Nestle argued for a 5% of withholding under the MFN clause. For example, see, this is a Swiss company, Nestle. For example, let's say a particular company A. So this is actually using some of the trademarks of Nestle. It's using recipes of Nestle, etc. It has to provide royalty to Nestle. Okay. So how is this royalty actually decided? So that royalty, if it is actually 10%, and if I had to pay 1 crore, if I have to pay 1 crore to this Nestle for using their trademarks, what I will do is I will actually pay them 90 lakhs. Okay, by deducting this 10%, which I will actually deposit here to my government on behalf of Nestle. So Swiss companies like Nestle argued that a 5% withholding tax under MFN clause, and however the court said this actually does not apply and it is 10%. And also they have actually expressed frustration over India's non-compliance, saying that India actually has not followed the principle of equal and fair treatment of the taxpayers in both the countries. Okay, so this is what it is. So what are the likely impacts because of the most favored nation status suspension by Switzerland? Is that first we will have higher tax liabilities. Okay, so Indian companies which are actually operating in Switzerland will have higher withholding tax rates on dividends and other incomes. That is, it will increase from 5% to 10%. So this will actually likely increase the burden on Indian businesses in Switzerland, particularly in sectors like IT, then pharmaceuticals, etc. Next one, Swiss companies in India like Nestle will also face higher dividend tax rates, and this will actually reduce the profitability of those companies as well. The second one is it will impact the bilateral investments, because Switzerland has actually committed on a 100 billion investment to India under EFTA, that is European Free Trade Association Pact. And now what will happen? The Swiss investors may actually reconsider their decisions in India due to increased tax burdens and the non-profitability that they are going to face. Okay. Now moving forward, the next one, let us actually understand about EFTA quickly. Here the member nations, this is nothing but it's an intergovernmental organization. Okay, so this actually came around in 1960s by the Stockholm Convention. So here whichever European countries were not willing to be a part of the European Union can be a part of this particular EFTA. So here the members include Iceland, you have the Liechtenstein, you have Norway and Switzerland, and this is an intergovernmental organization established in 1960 by the Stockholm Convention as an alternative trade bloc. Okay, that is the European states unwilling to join the European Union can be here, and here also the objective is to promote free trade and economic integration between the European members and globally. Next one, it is not a customs union. What do you mean by customs union? Here the European Union actually has a particular level or a particular amount of tax or the tariffs that it can actually impose. But unlike the EU, EFTA is not a customs union because it actually allows the members to set its own external tariffs. Okay, and also what happens here, European Union is a custom union because there is a particular tariff that is actually fixed by the EU in order to import any good from outside a non-EU member, and then there will actually be free movement of the goods within the EU members. Okay, so that is what it is over here. That is why EU is called as the custom union, whereas this EFTA is actually not a custom union because each individual member can fix their own tariff. So this is what it is. Now moving forward, the FTA's network. So here if you see, EFTA actually has an extensive FTA's free trade agreements. It actually covers over 60 countries, okay? And here it includes the EU as well, and it is headquartered at Geneva. And if you see India and EFTA, India is the ninth largest trading partner, and 2.5% of India's total merchandise trade actually constituted this one. Next one, the main items of India's exports to this particular EFTA grouping is textiles, chemicals, gems, jewelry, machinery, as well as pharmaceuticals. And the imports actually includes machinery, chemicals, precious metals, as well as medical instruments. Okay, so these are the things. Now moving forward, after 15 years of negotiations, India has recently signed this particular TEPA, that is nothing but Trade and Economic Partnership Agreement with the EFTA. Okay, after 15 years we have actually signed this. That ensures 100 billion investment in India from EFTA countries. Okay, so this is why this particular article became very important for the examination. Now moving forward, let us actually look into the next article that we'll be discussing today. Here, how a distant galaxy provides a peek into nascent Milky Way. So here we'll be understanding about the concept of gravitational licensing and Einstein's general theory of relativity. Next one is about the James Webb Telescope. All these things we'll be discussing about, and this is actually important from your general science perspective in the prelims examination and can be mapped to science and technology developments and applications and their effects in everyday life. Okay, so this is what it is. So let us actually move on to see what has been the previous year question. There was a question in 2002 on the James Webb Telescope, and it has been in use for such a long time. What are the unique features and how does it make it superior from the predecessor space telescope? So these kind of telescopes which are actually used in science as well as the research purposes and space technology becomes very important for your mains and the prelims examination. So here let us understand certain thing. NASA's James Webb Space Telescope has recently spotted a firefly sparkle. Okay, so what is this? It is a tiny young galaxy from around 600 million years after the Big Bang through a phenomenon called as gravitational lensing. So here we need to understand few of the concepts very well. So let's actually first understand the concept of visibility. After teaching these concepts, I'll again take you through this context. Okay, so you'll understand. So concept of visibility. How do you see? For example, if this pen is actually in front of me, how do I see the stylus in front of me is that light actually falls on this particular object and then it gets reflected back and forms the image on my retina, and that is why I can see that this is a pen. So this is the concept of visibility and this is the concept of image formation in our eye, and this is how I can actually see a particular object. Okay. Similarly, what happens is that if there is any kind of galaxy, say this is a galaxy, and here the light actually, how it is observed on a telescope here and then it is transmitted to the ground station of NASA, tell me. So how do you actually see the particular image of the galaxy is that when the galaxy is present, when it actually radiates light, what happens? It actually gets reflected, forms the image on this particular telescope. Let's say this is the James Webb Telescope, and then the image is actually sent to NASA over here. So this is how it actually happens. So this is the concept of visibility. And along with the concept of visibility, what we need to understand is the concept of gravity. Now let us move on to the concept of gravity. Now we know how is the image formation, right? So how it happens to my eye, similarly it actually happens on the telescope as well. and that's how we see the images. Okay, so the light from a galaxy, it actually travels like for such a long period, that is the distance is calculated in light years, right? It actually travels for millions of light years and it actually falls on the telescope. Okay, so whatever we see today is a thing that has actually been in the past and it is not the current. It's not that the galaxy is present, immediately it goes in 2 minutes and we get the image. So the image we see of the galaxies today are the images of the past. Okay, so this is what it is. Now let us move to the concept of gravity and light. Let's see how this works. Concept of gravity and light. So what happened is, according to Sir Isaac Newton, so let's see, according to Newton's theory, what did he actually say is that, according to, let's say, now it is Newton, right? So Newton says that any particular object, okay, any particular object which has a mass, that is, let's say, mass, actually will exert or will actually generate an attractive force that is called as the gravitation, or it is called as gravity. But why any particular object with a particular mass will generate this gravitation, the reason of which is actually not known. Okay, so according to Newton, there is actually an object of particular mass. It is actually going to create an attractive force that is called as what do you say? That is called as gravity. For example, sun. Sun is actually a big massive object, right? This object actually has a massive mass and that is going to create an attractive force and that is called as gravitation. It's going to attract the other planets towards each other. Okay, so this is what has been told by Newton. Now what happens, the reason was actually not the reason for which this actually happens was not known. Next came Albert Einstein. Okay, so what did Albert Einstein actually say? He said, Einstein. So he actually said that if you look at space, it's not an empty space. Okay, we think that space is empty and everything is hanging down there. No, but he actually said that the space is nothing but it is a space-time matrix. It actually has a space-time matrix. So you actually have the space-time matrix like this. Okay, so the space is a space-time matrix, and if you actually have any particular object with a particular mass, what happens? It actually creates a depression. For example, if it is a sun, it is going to have a particular mass. Okay, so this is the sun with a particular mass. So when it is actually suspended in this matrix, what happens? It is actually going to create a deep gorge or a depression. So now this is actually going to become this. So here you will have the sun and this is going to be the depression. Okay, so here there's going to be massive attraction, and because of which what happens, very small planets actually are attracted. So for example, if this is the earth, they are attracted towards the sun, and eventually what happens, the earth will collapse due to the massive gravitational force or the attraction. But is the earth actually collapsing into this particular matrix? No. Is it collapsing into this depression? No. That is because the earth actually exerts the centrifugal force in order to compensate this particular gravitational force, and that is why the earth actually rotates around the sun. That is how the other planets also rotate around the sun in different orbits without sinking or falling into the depression. So this is what Einstein actually said. So for example, if there is an object, so let's actually apply this principle. Okay, so similar thing, if there is an object, if there is a galaxy over here and the light from here is actually traveling. Okay, when the light is traveling, for example, if there is another object over here, okay, for example, let's say if it is a neutron star, or if it is going to be a black hole, or it is going to be any other object, what happens? The light over here bends and then it actually reaches this particular James Webb Telescope. And this is what is the concept of gravitational light, what to say, lensing. That is the light that actually comes from the galaxy or a star. It is going to bend, okay, because of the substance or because of the object that is present in between. So let us actually quickly go through what is it. So here NASA's James Webb Telescope, we know this is the object, right, that we are talking about, the telescope that's going to record. So this is the telescope. The telescope has spotted a firefly sparkle. This is a young galaxy. So this has actually captured the image or the light of this particular galaxy, that is the firefly sparkle, a tiny young galaxy from 600 million years after the Big Bang. And this actually has happened through a phenomenon of gravitational lensing, that is the bending of light that actually came here. So this is what is being spoken over here. So now let us quickly understand what is the gravitational lensing. This is a phenomenon in astrophysics and general relativity. And what does this mean? The light from a distant celestial object is bent and then it is magnified near a massive object like a neutron star or a black hole. Here is the telescope and here is actually the source. So here it is bending, okay. So it actually bends near a massive object or a galaxy or a black hole between the source and the observer. So this is what they are saying, and this is based on the Einstein's general theory of relativity, I told you, which actually says massive objects create a distortion in space-time matrix, acting like a lens to bend the light. And how this is actually useful is, it's an essential tool for understanding and studying the universe, and also understanding dark energy, understanding the dark matter and the large scale structure of the cosmos. Okay, this is what it is. And how the gravitational lensing work is that I told you the warping of space-time. So here when the massive objects are there, they are actually going to create a huge gravitational field that warps the surrounding space-time. This is number one. And warped space-time causes the light to bend. Okay, so it's going to bend like this, and there is light path distortion as well. And how will the observer actually have the perception? How will we see? How will he see that when there is bending of light, this creates magnified or distorted images of the object depending on the alignment of the source. Okay, so this is just the concept to understand what is this particular gravitational lensing and how it works. So see over here. So here this is the earth. Okay, so here there is a black hole plus a galaxy over here. So what happens? There is bending of light, and this is a distant galaxy. Okay, so here it is nothing but what the telescope actually sees is this one. Can you see? So this is how it actually works, this entire concept. Now let's move into a final discussion, that is a final topic, that is capital expenditure. So here the center consistently has hiked capex, and this has actually been the, what to say, by it has been the statement by the state finance minister. So let us actually see what is capex. So we'll understand what is capital expenditure and revenue expenditure, and this is actually important from the prelims perspective, that is economy, and mains under GS paper 3, government budgeting as well as economic growth. Okay, so you need to understand only one thing, that is expenditure of the government. So expenditure of the government is divided into two. One is capital expenditure, the next one is revenue expenditure. So revenue expenditure and capital expenditure. Okay, capital expenditure is nothing but that spending or the amount of money that the government actually spends either to create an asset, that is, either focusing on building an infrastructure, okay, etc. So that is, or you can say invest on the land over a long term. So that is an asset. So the expenditure of the government or spending on the government to create an asset or to reduce the liability. So what do you mean by liability? So whatever loans that the government actually has, in order to repay it if it is used, it's called as capital expenditure. At the same time, what do you mean by revenue expenditure? The expenditure of the government which is actually not going to result in any kind of asset creation or reducing the liability, That is called as revenue expenditure. In simple terms, for example, the pensions that you give, the salaries that the government actually gives, at the same times giving subsidies, then investing on education, spending for health, etc. So all these things are revenue expenditure. So this is actually very, very simple, right? So we need to understand what are the two different types of expenditure. Now moving forward, let us actually see a previous year question that has been asked in the 2022 prelims examination. So in the prelims examination, the question was with reference to the expenditure made by an organization or company, which of the following, whether it's capital expenditure or revenue expenditure, you need to know the basic concepts, okay? So let's quickly move forward. So the finance minister has actually stated that, see, this is not important, okay? So the finance minister has actually said there has been a hike in the capital expenditure. That is what is very important for you to understand. So let's move past this and get into the concept. What is capital expenditure? The expenditure of the government that either creates the asset for the government like an infrastructure or building, or going to reduce the liabilities by repaying the loans, is called as capital expenditure. It also includes the expenditure or the amount which is incurred for acquiring fixed assets like land and investment by the government that actually gives the profits or the dividends, or that means the share or the profits in the future. So it is of two types. Revenue expenditure, it has payment of interest, salaries, subsidies, education, health, defense services, etc. Whereas capital expenditure is construction of roads, that is infrastructure, purchase of land, investment in shares, and then loans to the states and foreign affairs, as well as repayment of the loans. This is called as capital expenditure. So what do you mean by effective capital expenditure? Is that any expenditure that is going to create a long-term asset and infrastructure, plus the grants given to the states for creating the capital assets. This is actually called as the effective capital expenditure. So why is capital expenditure important? Obviously, it is going to be a long-term in nature. It's going to create a number of employment, and then it is actually going to improve the production facilities as well as operational efficiency. Because of all these reasons, creation of assets, an economy generates revenue and also improves the production facilities, increases the labor participation, and takes stock of the economy and raises the capacity to produce more in the future. So these are all the things. So here, if you actually see the trends in the capital expenditure in the economy, it has actually increased by 28%. And if you actually see this graph, you can actually see these are this one from the economic survey. Okay, so this is the rate at which the effective capital expenditure has also increased. These are all the general trends and how the government has actually been doing. Now moving forward, let us quickly solve the mains practice question. Here you need to analyze the strategic significance of India-UAE relationship. You need to say how it is actually vital for India's energy security, the regional security, etc. And in the body, you need to discuss about the strategic significance, the economic ties, cultural links, challenges, etc. And then in the conclusion, you need to say how you need to collaborate better in order to foster the economic as well as the security trends. Now these are the questions from yesterday. That is the Disaster Management Amendment Bill. That is, the state governments can create a separate urban disaster management authority. Yes, this is correct. And the NDMA can make regulations without prior approval. This is actually wrong. So since only one is correct, the answer will be option A. Now moving on to the second one. With reference to the pardoning power of the president can pardon a death sentence. Yes, this is correct. And while granting, the president of India must actually consult the Union Council of Ministers. This is also correct because we actually explained and discussed that in detail. Moving forward, which of the following are classified as no development zones? So clearly we actually discussed that the entire CRZ1A as well as area up to 200 meters from the high tide line, these both are actually classified as no development zone. So you need to know about the coastal regulation zone. So here option B, that is 1 and 3 are correct. So here there are other questions as well which are actually part of today's discussion which will be taken up on Monday. So here we actually request you to solve these questions on the website and to comment your answers in the comment section below. So I hope this particular session was actually very interactive as well as informative. For more such videos as well as live sessions, please do like, share and subscribe to Narayana IAS Academy YouTube channel. Thank you.